And a lot of times actors don't have like a finite ending to their career. And we're going to talk about Quentin Tarantino today. Like Quentin Tarantino is going
Only
to write.
transition.
Quentin Tarantino is about to write himself the greatest swan song in the history of movies. It's going to be self-indulgent as hell, but it's going to be absolutely incredible. One of the masters of the pen in terms of movies. Ricky, we got to talk about this. This is before we hit CinemaCon as well. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood sequel. It's happening at Netflix. This came out on April 1st. I thought it was a joke. Like, not in a way like I was laughing, but I'm like, you're not going to get me. Like, I see so many things like the Batman 2 is canceled, and Robert Pattinson is joining the DCU alongside David Cornsweet. I see all these like April Fool's like jokes being thrown at me. But then the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood sequel is actually happening. It's not a TV show. It's not a bounty hunter spinoff. It's happening. That will have a focus on Cliff Booth with Brad Pitt, which should not be a surprise because Quentin Tarantino has written a novelization of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood that does a deeper dive on the Cliff Booth character. He is more of taking center stage, the main character. And Tarantino, he's writing this script. Also shouldn't be a shock, but he will not be directing it for his final movie. Instead, that honor will go to another iconic filmmaker, David Fincher. David Fincher directing a Tarantino script, a sequel for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood with Brad Pitt. This comes from Deadline, Ricky Flex. Did you think you were getting fooled, right, when this news came out?
Absolutely. Like this was the biggest, like I think this was more fake than the Batman getting canceled. Batman Part 2 getting potentially canceled, or the Batman or Robert Pattinson in talks to join the DCU. This seemed more April Foolish than that. I don't know if that's more of a testament to the Batman problems or this is just that crazy, but we'll move past that. The reason why it's so crazy to me is not because Brad Pitt's coming back to this, not because this is even happening, right? Because like you said, the novelization's there. We've heard about the rumors of Cliff Booth and Brad Pitt and a Tarantino potentially writing and directing this movie. Also a prequel. Like we heard rumors around this. That's not what's shocking to me. What is shocking is that we have Quentin Tarantino, okay, a guy that has already made this movie, and he's giving basically what he's already written, his baby, a guy where he was nominated for Best Picture for this, and giving it away to the biggest perfectionist in Hollywood. The guy where if you're acting in a movie with this guy, right, you end up hating him afterwards and you never want to work with him again unless your name is Brad Pitt. Like, this guy makes everyone hate him when he's on set because he will make you do 1,000 takes of something just because you blinked one time too many out of 100. Like, this guy is the biggest perfectionist in Hollywood, and he has Quentin Tarantino, the king of extra dialogue script for him to actually direct. It seems absurd to me. It seems absolutely absurd, especially because it's a sequel. It's not like it's a Quentin Tarantino script. It's a brand new movie. Here you go. It's a Tarantino script, screenplay. Here you go, David Fincher. No. This is a Tarantino baby. This is a Tarantino sequel. And David Fincher is going to have to take it and respect it. And he'll do whatever he has to do. But that is the most shocking thing about this and why I thought it was an April Fool's joke.
This is absolute porn for the checkup. This is absolute porn for
this is what we live for.
Movie nerds. David Fincher and Quentin Tarantino making a movie together, and one of it's a sequel to a movie where Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio were starring in it. Like, what? Like, this is literally sounds like it's made up. My first reaction was, how are these two going to coexist? You know, because imagine Fincher is directing, Tarantino is going to be on set. He wrote the screenplay.
Has to be.
So Tarantino, I was watching this interview with Walton Goggins, who he's just in The White Lotus. And Walton Goggins was talking about his experience with Quentin Tarantino. He appeared in Django and The Hateful Eight. And he said that you don't deviate from the script, right? You never move away from what Quentin Tarantino writes. There's no room for improvisation. You're talking about like the extra, like he's not afraid to go on a tangent inside of the script, but it's not improvised, you know? And Fincher, so like Tarantino has a very like hard way of thinking, like it needs to be executed this way. And David Fincher is the king of, we're going to do the take until we get it right. So that's a person that's also very committed to the way they envision something. They have to be on the same page, right? They have to be on the same page. But I feel like Fincher has to give in a little bit to Quentin Tarantino because this is his world. This is his sequel. It is his script. I feel like he has to be more accommodating for Tarantino. But then you flip it and you're like, well, Tarantino could have directed this himself. He's giving it to Fincher. And not only that, this is coming out on Netflix, which is Fincher's territory, marked land for David Fincher. So I just have a hard time seeing these guys like really like chumming it up, I guess, from every scene one to the next.
But like, if it was going to happen, which actor would be the guy to kind of mend fences and say, hey, guys, bring it in. Like, let's huddle up here.
Brad
the middleman. It would be Brad Pitt, right? That's obviously David Fincher's guy. And Tarantino has a bunch of guys, but Brad Pitt is clearly one of those guys. And one of the few guys that has worked with David Fincher, and probably the only one that's worked with him on multiple projects that's been in multiple Tarantino projects. I'm probably the only one, and I want to confirm that 99.9% sure that is the only one. So he is probably the only man on the planet that could probably put his arms around both of them and be like, guys, we're doing this, whether you like it or not. You can have this one, Tarantino. David, you could have this one, right? You're going to go push and pull, hit for hit. They're going to make it work because Brad Pitt is the star of this movie. And that's probably the only reason. And David Fincher, yes, he's one of the greatest directors of all time. Doesn't really write too much, right? But like we mentioned, he's a perfectionist. This guy knows how to handle a script, and they will iron out any kinks. The problem will be on set. And that's where the Brad Pitt solution comes in. The middleman comes into play to solve any disagreements. That's where he'll come in. It's just going to be interesting to see that both their strong alpha mentalities on set together. That will be box office. I would pay so much money to see that. Not the movie, to see like just them trying to shoot this movie. That could be a movie.
We need the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, right?
Yes.
The Once Upon a Time in Hollywood on streaming. That's like what it is, and it's just the background of watching these two titans duke it out on one set. You know, I gotta see. I can't imagine this just goes swimmingly. You know, that would be surprising. Brad Pitt is the middle of the Venn diagram, though. He is that guy, the commonality between the two. So I think he's the perfect lead. You know, and this is also crazy because Tarantino, I think it's him getting Fincher to direct this movie. That is just like, I am so protective of my resume and my career. I cannot have my 10th movie be a sequel to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. The movie critic seems like that movie was just a sequel to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And it was going to star Brad Pitt, apparently. Some people like crossed over what the story was going to be, who was going to appear in this, is that. It seems like he just wants to make this so bad, but he is so protective of his legacy and his standing. He refuses to direct a movie he needs to make. You know, it is absolutely wild that he is basically saying, Fincher, take this, and then I'll just tell you what to do. You know, that's kind of what it feels like right now. And Tarantino, like, he is someone that I can see his career now lasting way beyond his 10th and final film, not to direct, but he'll just do this. He'll be like, okay, PTA, like, why don't we collab and write something together and you direct it, you know, or whatever it may be. You know, it doesn't have to be PTA. I know he writes his own stuff and everything like that, but like on any other type of director where he was like, hey, you can execute what I'm looking for. You'll still have my words to it. It's going to feel like my movie. I can have my directed by 10 perfect movies, but I can still continue to work. I think this is kind of the exit plan for Tarantino.
It's smart. And what this also tells you, right? This checkup news, that he will not be directing his own freaking IP, his own baby, right? His sequel. You could cross off Kill Bill 3 as a potential 10th and final Tarantino movie. You could cross that out, just like you cross out the movie critic, because clearly he wants to deviate from Hollywood as well. He will not do Django 2. He will not do any sequel to any of his prior movies, and he would drift away from a Hollywood movie. Now the question is, like, what is he going to do? Right? Because now we kind of got that answer. And he's always talked about doing Star Trek, but Star Trek's kind of back in the works. So I don't think he's going to do that either.
He's going to do what he's doing with Fincher. He's going to get someone else to direct a Star Trek movie he writes. That's
Yeah,
gonna happen.
well, I guess, like, he will do one more directed film, though, for his 10th. It's just
Mhm.
like, what is it gonna be? Now it's open season.
Yeah.
It really could be anything.
It feels like we're back to the drawing board a little bit. I feel like it's just like we'll see. It might be years from now. It might not be anytime soon. This becomes the priority, I think, because things
Yes.
are already lining up. And I think we should move on and talk about more of Brad Pitt's in the lead here. Brad Pitt was not in the lead in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Brad Pitt was supporting. Leonardo DiCaprio was the star. And then it becomes now. Cliff Booth is returning. What does that mean for Rick Dalton? One of the best aspects, if not the best aspect of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, was the relationship between Rick Dalton and Cliff Booth. Are we just going to be ditching the Rick Dalton aspect? Is Leonardo DiCaprio even going to show up in this movie? It said, according to this report, it is doubtful that Leonardo DiCaprio will return for the sequel. Ricky, I have a hard time believing this and saying that, yeah, like we can just expect to not see Leo in this movie because of what I just said. But also, it's not like Leo hasn't done streaming before and hasn't worked with Netflix. He did Don't Look Up with Adam McKay. Like, that's not even an argument to me. And to be on a set that has Fincher, Tarantino, Pitt, and then DiCaprio, that'll go down. That's a Hall of Fame elite set that I feel like Leo would want to be a part of. Maybe he's too big of an alpha figure when you have to like make this movie Cliff Booth. I would say you book him for an extended cameo. That's what I say for this movie.
That's what I said. I said Leo extended cameo because also
I
Leo is
hate how we
out.
think so similarly all the time, dude.
But, like, hear me out for a second, though. Um, Leo has so much going on. So much going on. We've talked about it before because all the Scorsese stuff that he's doing, Leo's in most of it, right? He's gonna be in PTA this year. The Wager is in development. How that dog movie is in production. The Jim Jones or Roosevelt, which is still on the IMDb, so I'm going to keep saying it until it's off the IMDb, still possible. That's a lot of stuff, let alone all his producing stuff, and also it's Leo. He's one of the last. I talked about the '90s era of Hollywood A-listers, and Val Kilmer. Leo's kind of one of the last people of that era. So all I'll say is like it's going to be hard to strap him down, but I will pin it back to you where it's like, hey, like this is Cliff Booth in the lead, not Leo, right? So it's like what in the novel, in the novelization of this, where Cliff Booth takes the lead, d- is this guy even freaking? Is Leo even a part of the story, or is it like Roman Polanski? He gets his big break and he's like a A-lister in Hollywood and he's sayonara. Like, what is the deal here?
No, Rick's still in the book. It's like mostly centered on Cliff though, and Cliff's like a huge cinephile in the book, if I remember correctly. In the movie, Cliff is a guy who's on movie sets. He has this myth or a legend about him, not necessarily a myth because it's probably true that he killed his wife, but he's just like always on movie sets. But you don't get a sense that he loves movies. In the book, you get a sense he loves movies. So that might be a little bit changed character from the first to second movie. And you're going to get to see more of the personal side and not just like him hanging out with his dog, putting on an old episode of whatever Western TV show, Bounty Law, whatever it may be. I think it's going to be like, that's what people are saying, kind of clashing with the movie critic, where it's like, it was going to be more of like Cliff Booth, like hanging around people who love movies, type of thing. So I think it's going to be a little change for the character that we see. It's going to be more closer to the novelization where Rick takes a back seat or is shut out of the movie completely. I think it could work, but also DiCaprio, like, I guess it might feel a little gimmicky if he was only in it for an extended cameo. Leo doesn't do gimmicks, but I'd also say, not only does he not do gimmicks, but he's never played a role twice. He's never done a sequel. I feel like that's kind of taboo for both things are kind of like a taboo thing for Leo.